Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm the good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two-Shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good.
Hi and welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, and I'm that recovering good girl and your Victorious Woman Empowerment Partner. And this is where us Victory Chicks and you guys who love us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to make our lives better and more fulfilling and give us a little more jazz and sparkle. And I'm so glad you came to Happy Hour with me today. You know, our guest today is a local Victory Chick. She's my neighbor. Her name is Annette Glaudel. Annette took an early retirement a couple of years ago, and since then she's been doing some interesting things. I thought you'd find them interesting too. So in just a few minutes, Annette's going to be here and we'll be talking with her. Wait till you hear. They're very different things. Some of them are very different things. And say, do you know that August is Romance Awareness Month? Well, if you're a regular listener, you probably do because I mention it at least once every August. And romance is funny. You know, do you remember like when you were new as a couple? Romance happens almost by accident. And when you're around together for a few years, it doesn't happen so easy. So when I was writing a blog post for this month, I was thinking about one of our past guests, Janice Kaplan. You might remember she was about 3 years ago. She wrote a book called The Gratitude Diaries. What she did for that book was, it was kind of a project. She decided to take a year to research the topic of gratitude. And she wrote down the areas of her life and picked one area for each month. And the first month that she picked was going to be about her marriage. And I think she was married about 30 years. It might have been longer than 30 years. And she was curious to see if anything could change. She didn't have a bad marriage, but she was curious to see if anything would change using the whole gratitude thing. Well, after a month, to her surprise, it did. So when I was writing this month's blog post about Romance Awareness Month for the 5yearmarriage.com, which is the one I posted it on, I took out Janice's book and reread that chapter. Now, I remembered that she talked about something called habituation. Now, in my own shorthand, what that means is that we get used to something, and when we do, we forget how special it is. And that's true, isn't it? Like when you get a new car and it's all you can talk about for, a couple of days for a while. And then you get used to it, and maybe down the road you had a little car trouble and you don't like the dealer or the station you take it to, and somewhere along the line that car loses a little bit of its luster. You don't really like it any less. It's just not that shiny new thing that you can't stop thinking is so special. Or your new house. When you bought it, it was your dream house. But after a while, living in it day after day, you don't think about it being your dream house anymore. It's the house where you live. Well, that's called habituation. All that is pretty normal, except that a car or a house don't really notice the difference. If you're not fussing on the car, fussing on the house and the car don't really care. But when it's a person, especially when it's your sweetie, they do notice the difference. So on 5yearmarriage.com, I give you 5 things you could do, and they're all easy things. You guys, they're all easy things to bring some romance back into your marriage. And, of course, the first tip is to say thank you. In that interview, Janice Kaplan said that when she started thanking her spouse, she said that at first he was confused. Like, he didn't know what her game was. She was saying thank you all the time, and that wasn't common. So he was like, what's she up to? But then as she kept it up, he started to respond. And by the end of the month, it was transformed her well-seasoned marriage. And as a result, she was happier. And so it transformed her marriage. And then each month when she did another thing that she focused on gratitude, it transformed that too. So take a look at the blog post. I posted a link to it today on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. There was something else new in the news this week that got me really curious. It's that thing about the genetic testing company, 23andMe. You see the commercials all over the place, and they're catchy little pieces that show a guy who thought he was Italian, but he wasn't, and how he looks like one of his Eastern European ancestors. Or the guy who thought he was German, but he wasn't. He was Scottish, and he traded his lederhosen for a kilt. And that beautiful black girl who discovered she has genetic ties all over the world. So all that is pretty interesting, and I think inviting. Really, should I do it or shouldn't I do it? And I've heard wild stories about people who shared their had their DNA tested and found out that they had ancestors in odd places. But I have to tell you, one of the most bizarre stories is from one of my friends. Her spouse did a genetic testing and found out that he didn't share the genetic stuff with his grandfather. When they started checking things out, they found out that the man he thought was his grandfather, I'll call him Tom, was one of two men that lived in his father's house. So there was grandfather Tom and grandmother Ethel and their 6 kids. And Tom shared a bedroom with Ethel, and the kids shared bedrooms. And then this man, who nobody knows where he came from, but I'll call him Harry, also had a bedroom. And it turns out only the oldest kid in the family had Tom's DNA. The other 5 kids had Harry's DNA. And it's not like Tom and Harry were brothers. And nobody seems to know Harry's story, like what he was doing there, or why he was living there. None of that. They don't know if Tom knew Ethel and Harry were sleeping together, and if Tom knew that the father of his 5 kids was Harry. The one thing that everybody noticed was that at family gatherings, Tom, the father, was always off to the side and not particularly engaged. And meanwhile, Ethel and houseguest Harry were the life of the party. The only other clue they had was that Ethel was pregnant with Tom's kid when they got married. That was child number 1, the one who actually shared the DNA. So was Tom gay, and the pregnancy was the result of Tom's inability to deal with his homosexuality? Not a surprise for the 1920s. And once married, he told Ethel, and they cut a deal, and then she got involved with Harry. Or were they polyamorous, and Ethel was sleeping with Tom and Harry? The possibilities could be endless. And so it makes you curious about your ancestry. At least it did for me. But am I curious enough to get my DNA tested? I've been wary of those services, and some of that news came out this week that made me convinced that I'm not being overly wary. That company, 23andMe, is selling their DNA results to GlaxoSmithKline for $300 million. So you plunk down your $100 or $200, spit in a cup, and send it to 23andMe. They send you interesting information back. And then you can do some research on one of the ancestry sites to see if anything rings true. Because it seems you don't know what you're actually getting with those results. And apparently when you spit in that cup, you sign off on your rights to what happens with your DNA. So they can sell the stuff you bought to someone else, and they don't share, that $300 million, none of that's going back to anybody who took a test. Not that we would care so much about the money, and this is my issue, if they sell it to a pharmaceutical company, will they sell it to a life insurance or a health insurance or a company or to Medicare? And will you get turned down for something because, according to your genetic predisposition found in those tests, that procedure that you need, they've decided it's not a good use of their money? It's kind of scary, right? But those commercials make me wonder where else my DNA ancestors were from. And until this week, I've been saying that I wouldn't be surprised if I had some African-American ancestors. I mean, Tunisia's right across the water from Italy, by the toe of the boot. And although that probably would be more likely if my ancestors were from Sicily, it got me curious enough to look at some of the Italian geography. And here's my big takeaway. My ancestors were from Abruzzo in the province of Chieti, which is in the middle of the boot on the eastern side. So it's closer to Greece than Africa. So I could have some Greek blood. But here's what fascinates me about that. Chieti is a place where you aren't very far from either the mountains or the water. So you could take a hike one day and hang on the beach the next. And that's exactly what it's like on Mount Desert Island in Maine, where I go on my vacation. You can hike at Chieti National Park one day and be with the beachgoers in the Gulf of Maine the next. And when I'm there, I feel so totally at home. People have often asked me, how did you find that? Start going to Bar Harbor and Mount Desert Island. Well, I found it by accident. Or was it by accident? Do I have some genetic memory from my ancestors for a place in the United States that is similar to the province of Chieti in Italy? I'm not likely to ever know the answer to that unless I have my DNA tested, and maybe not even then. But it's curious, isn't it? Do you ever wonder what leads you to do something and sort of makes no sense to your known family history? It's kind of a mystery, huh? Well, it's no mystery that we have to go for a break, and I'm anxious for you to meet our guest, Annette Glaudel. She and I discovered that we share some history, sort of. I'll explain all that when we'll talk about it with Annette. So listen, go get some happy hour, something to drink, and come back for me and Annette Glaudel. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous Victorious Women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and with me today is Annette Glaudel. Welcome, Annette.
Thank you so much, Annmarie.
Listen, Annette, in my monologue, I was talking about that DNA testing and how people are finding connections that they never would have imagined. Did you ever have your DNA tested?
Yeah, actually, me and one of my brothers, I have two brothers and two sisters, and one of my brothers and I both had DNA done through Ancestry.com. Mm-hmm. Now, this was a long time ago, before there was a lot of debate about, the privacy of things.
Yeah,
but it's been very interesting because you make contacts through Ancestry.com of relatives. And we did, in fact, find a cousin that lives up in the area where my father grew up. A whole side of the family we never knew about.
Really?
Yeah, it was really good.
Now, how did you find that? Like, what?
Because their DNA, they had submitted their DNA, and we had, and then they came up as a match in Ancestry, saying that you have I think it was second cousin, that lived in this town. So we...
Here in this country or someplace else?
No, here. Just right up state Pennsylvania.
Huh.
Yeah. So we've been to a couple of their family reunions.
Oh, that must be fun.
It is. Very, very cool. Yeah. And my brother has been in extreme detail putting together our ancestry and our family trees. I maintain the tree on Ancestry, but he has done an enormous amount of research. Mm-hmm.
It always fascinates me. The little bit that I've done with it, there were not a lot of records. Once they came here to the States, there were records. But back in Italy, there were, births and deaths were written in the book in the church.
In the church, right. And a lot of those were destroyed as wars came through.
That's true. And some of that information I know for a fact. Well, the fact is my mother telling me. So it may or may not be, but that they weren't correct.
Right.
So... so you really don't kind of know.
Like one of my relatives on my mom's side is named John Smith. So you can imagine how easy it is trying to find the records for John Smith.
My girlfriend married a John Smith, and we always would laugh about it. It's like, they're never going to track you down for nothing.
That's right, yeah.
Well, and you and I have a connection that we did not know about.
I know. I think it's just really cool. I tell people about it because I just think it's cool.
Yeah. So you grew up in Lansing. I grew up in Howardtown. So we traveled in pretty much the same places. But the thing that fascinates me the most was And we didn't know this we knew each other for years. Our fathers went to school together.
Right, went to Villanova together. And the thing that got me is at my father's funeral, you looked at the yearbook for Villanova and saw your father's picture.
And that was very emotional for me
Yes.
because I think that by then my father was married and they were living in Havertown. They married and he had a kid. And I'm guessing he didn't have the money to spend on a yearbook. I have his high school yearbook, but never had a college yearbook. So to see him in that college, it was like so emotional for me.
But I thought that was cool. Plus, they died on the same day.
Oh, that is. They
Yeah,
both,
not the same year, obviously, but
right.
the same day.
Yeah, they both passed away on May 22nd.
Right.
Which is just so freaky. Now, we don't know if they even knew each other.
That's right.
My father was a C and yours was a G, so they could have
Right.
been in class together.
Maybe.
Because they were both in accounting, right?
No, my father was in engineering.
Oh, he was. Oh, so they wouldn't. My father was in accounting, so they may.
Yeah, but you don't know. With theology classes and English classes, who knows?
Oh, that's right. And there probably weren't as many people there as there are today.
That's right.
It was just freaky.
Yeah.
You know, Annette, you're an engineer, and in my first book, Victorious Woman, I wrote about Kathy Zingaro Clark, who was a woman who wanted to be an engineer. She's probably, I'm sure by now, she's in her 60s. She was in her 50s when I interviewed her. And she said that she went to her guidance counselor, and her guidance counselor came over and talked to her parents and told her not to bother. It would be a waste of money because even if she made it through engineering school, she would never be accepted in the engineering field. That was about the same time for you. How was it different for you?
Well, interestingly enough, I went to an all-girls high school, and the guidance counselor then was an elderly nun who was the sweetest, nicest person. But when I talked to her about engineering schools, she didn't dissuade me, but she just said, I can't help you, because she didn't know anything about anything like that. Because most of the people at the time, and no problem with this, but we're going into education, teaching, nursing, or, administrative type work. So she really couldn't help me. She didn't, like I said, she didn't dissuade me. So I just had to do my own research.
Well, yeah, but girls, it was teaching.
Yeah, nursing.
Nursing, or you became a secretary.
Right. Yeah. So I just did my own research. Back then, of course, we didn't have the internet. So we just had to page through a million different books looking for what colleges had what majors, and so that's what I did.
And how supportive were your parents?
Oh, good.
That?
Yeah, my mom always said, do whatever you want to do. And she was a nurse, but she always told all of us, just do whatever you want to do. And really, my brother, who I was talking about earlier, my one brother who does the family ancestry, he was like 2 years different in high school from me. And I loved chemistry, I loved math, and he said, go into engineering. And I had never thought about that, because I never thought the two of them being put together, but that's what I did. I applied for engineering school.
And so you did. You actually made it through school.
Yeah, I made it, yeah.
And then you worked in that for years, but did you find any of that anti sentiment to being a woman in the engineering field?
At different times, not in college. College was great. I went to University of Pennsylvania for undergrad, and it was nice there. That school is huge, but back then, our engineering, it was divided by the different disciplines. So our chemical engineering, which I was in, was maybe 25 people in our classes, and 5 of them were women. So I never thought about it. I never thought about being separate. I honestly never did. I never wanted to join women in engineering groups, because I just didn't think that I was different. I just figured I'm just one of the gang. And in graduate school it was fine, and when I started working in research and development. And even then I didn't think of it really. It just wasn't on my mind. And when I went into research and development, it was years later somebody told me, do you realize you were the first woman in this process development as an engineer? I said, no, I had never realized
Nobody ever
that.
brought it up before.
No, but I didn't even think about it. Yeah. But it's then when I moved into refineries and operations more, then that became more of a topic to talk about.
Interesting. So did you think that so you probably didn't even think you might not even get a job?
No, I never thought about that, no.
So that's interesting, because some people will say, well, I know I'm climbing uphill, but I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
That was never a thought in your mind, huh?
Not really. And maybe that's because of my mom saying, hey, you go for it. If you want something, she always said, if you want something, you got to ask for it. So you just go. But I just enjoyed what I was doing, so I didn't really think too much about that. But like I said, it was later in my career where, then it would become, okay, maybe some people would say, I really don't think women belong here.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did you when you first started out, I would presume you mostly worked with men.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And did you ever encounter another woman, and did you ever, buddy up with that woman?
No. There were some women engineers at the time when I first started, and many, many more later. But again, I never sought that connection. I think as I get older, I think about that more and about the support you can have by, with women or with people that you have like interests with.
That's interesting, because some people let that be their whole, let that color their whole thing. But sometimes they think it's almost like it's better not to know any better. If you aren't thinking that could be, then maybe you don't even notice. If somebody's saying something to you, you don't even notice, because it's not a thought in your head. It's like, that's that's a discrimination thing.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to discrimination, as many people will tell you. Very sensitive, but I just approach it like I belong.
That's awesome. I think that's a really good attitude. We have so much more to talk about. We need to take a break. So let's everybody go get something else to drink and come back, and we'll be talking a little bit more with Annette Glaudel. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself, and now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Annette Glaudel. And Annette, you had an interesting career, but you know what? A few years ago, you were diagnosed with cancer. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like? What kind did you have?
Yeah, I had ovarian cancer, and
you're here to tell about it.
I know. Yeah, ovarian cancer, as a lot of people know, is just not something you ever want to get. Not that you want to get any cancer, but the statistics are not real great for ovarian cancer. But the thing is that I didn't have any what I would consider what they talk about to be classic symptoms, but I'm constantly trying to forward things on Facebook and stuff to people about ovarian cancer. And just last week, or sometime in the past 10 days, my niece's mother-in-law just found out she has ovarian cancer that's already spread. And it's sad because the symptoms are just very subtle. And things like feeling full, have your abdomen kind of puffy, and having back pain, and feeling bloated, and not being able to eat a lot. They're the symptoms. But, that can be symptoms of a lot
of different things. Yeah.
So it's easy to ignore. But so I just tell people, with anything in your health, you really have to be adamant and be your own advocate to push. Like, from what I understand, and I don't know the details, but this woman I'm talking about, her family doctor would tell her different things and say, well, it might be this or it might be that, but you really have to push and to try to get a CT scan or something. And again, I'm not a health professional, but just it's scary to hear about getting ovarian cancer. Now, I was lucky. It was stage 2 when I had it, and that was almost 8 years ago. And then I had a recurrence about a year and a half after my first diagnosis, and that was the scarier part, I think.
I would think that would be, because you're sort of going along thinking, oh, good, and then, and you know what, Annette, at that same time, your mother passed away.
Right.
And your father was needing care, so you moved him in with you, so you were dealing with that and dealing with your father, and your father was in failing health.
Yeah. My mother had passed away, and then I had gotten ovarian cancer, but in the meantime, we had moved my father in with me, and that was, that's a whole other thing, just a joy to have him there. But yeah, luckily, my father had some funds to be able to help with getting some care in the house, to have nurses' aides there who were just very kind and wonderful. And so that when I was going through chemo and recovering from surgery and things, that they could at least focus on him during the day. Now, at night, I was there with him. And there was a struggle sometimes because, when you're with chemo, obviously you're exhausted. And my father, at that time, he kept getting up at night and walking around. So that was a little bit difficult. But he was a joy to have there. And, everything comes together somehow. At that time is when I went on disability at work, but then I retired right then. So I just felt like it was all coming together in some, blessed way.
That's true. It did work out in an interesting way for you. I remember that.
Yeah.
And it was I was talking to a friend of mine who's the sole caregiver for her spouse, and he's mentally all okay, but he has Parkinson's, and he has some trouble with his back. He can't walk. He's been in a wheelchair for a long time. And it was her birthday, and I called her. She lives in South Carolina, and I said, do you have somebody coming in to help you? She said, oh, no. She said, we can't do that. And it wasn't a financial thing. It was, if we do that, it's like a signal that things are progressing worse to a worse place. But I understand that from his perspective, but if something happens to her, who's going to take care of him?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think sometimes people forget to think about that.
Yeah, you really have to be thinking a couple steps ahead and what could happen.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, caregiving, one of the things I do, I volunteer with the Veterans Administration in Coatesville in their caregiver support program. And that is just a wonderful program where people who are caring for veterans, like I was, they just provide all the support and resources to help you get through that. So that's just a wonderful program with the VA.
So is that around here, or do you go to Coatesville?
Yeah, in Coatesville.
So that's one of the, you have done, since you've retired, more volunteer work than anybody I think I know.
No. Well,
and that's, like, some people have like a cause and they do that. But you're with the Veterans Administration. You're on some place called Good Works. I don't know what that is.
Good Works. I'm telling you, it's this great program in Chester County. So to start off with, I first had started being involved with this other program called Appalachia Service Project, which is repairing homes for low-income people who are in bad straits some parts of their life, but in central Appalachia, so in West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky area. And I take youth there each summer with a group of adults. So high school teenagers.
So when you say that you take, we'll come back to Good Works, but let's talk about the Appalachia Project. So when you say you take youth there, are they kids from around here, from the local high school?
Yeah, local high school kids. So whether it's, Shanahan, East, Salesianum, whatever, they kind of get word of mouth out and talk to each other about trips that they've been on. and then we get more from other different areas through word of mouth.
And how many kids go and how many adults go?
We usually have, say, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 adults and 20 kids. This year we had a lot less. We had a small team of 12 of us all together. But usually it's more than that. Usually it's somewhere around 30 people.
And how long do you go for?
For a week. But we prepare for maybe 6 months ahead of time, just making sure that everybody understands the community that we're walking into, the type of poverty we're walking into, what the homes tend to look like, what the people are like. So it's an education process for everybody. So you want to get everybody prepared for that.
And when you get down there, is stuff there already there, or do you have to go to Home Depot and bring it with you?
No, actually, the Appalachia Service Project has this summer program for youth, but they also operate all through the year. And they focus on that area of the country, which has very high poverty rates. But when we get there, there's a staff of college kids, and they run this center for the county, and there might be 25 counties at one time doing work. So we go there, we stay at like a high school, elementary school, or a church, and sleep on air mattresses. But the staff there gets all the supplies we need.
Wait, you don't sleep in a hotel?
No. No. Somebody told me, they're not going on this trip unless I can get a shower in a hotel. And I said, no, but it's a week. Everybody could do it for a week, right?
Yes, not everybody can. So, some people are really fussy about that, so they wouldn't. But that's the deal that they sign up for when they go, right?
Right.
That's hard. I think that's hard for kids. I think that's hard for anybody.
Well, I think for high school kids, it's fun. It's an adventure. And for us adults, we rough it for the week, but we get to know each other, and I've made more friends through that than probably anywhere, just having had that experience.
Do people come from other states, or is it like the week you're there, is it just people from Pennsylvania?
No, it's all over the country people come from. They might be coming from Michigan or Maine or wherever, and they all bring their youth with them, and we work for a week down there repairing homes.
And do you teach the kids how to do that?
Yes. So the adults, some of the kids, like one of the young women we had with us this year, she had spent all last year with AmeriCorps doing Habitat for Humanity. So she was great. I mean, she already had a lot of experience. But yeah, the adults will try to, train the kids on how to use power tools or how to fix things. And that's the part of the job that I really love a lot, is teaching youth how to do things. Because, man, if I had been 16 or 17 or 18 and somebody had taught me all that, that would have been great.
Yeah, you're the power tool queen in our development.
Yeah.
So what kind of thing, how does that work you do with the Appalachian Project, how does that impact the community that you're working in?
Well, it's good. And in some ways it's unfortunate because there's so many people that apply for help. So many people down there, thousands of people that apply to Appalachia Service Project to get help. And we only help, maybe 5% of the people that apply. So it's sad to see that. But we do things like, repair a roof that is leaking, which then causes problems inside the house. So the floors rot out, or the insulation isn't there, or the plumbing's not right, or the plumbing's just leaking out under the house. So we're just trying to do a lot of different things for people that have they've gotten by with what they have, and they're happy. But we can make them safer. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because if you know how to do with what you have, then
That's right. And that's a good lesson for a lot of people to learn when we're there, too, is you don't need all this stuff. We don't need all this stuff.
Yeah, I guess the Appalachian people don't have their cell phones and tablets.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
Oh, do they?
A lot of them. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Because that's, when you're down there, a lot of times you could be miles away from somebody else. So you really want to have that connection.
Interesting. Do you have any particular person that you can think of who was particularly moved at the work that you did?
Yeah, a couple. I remember this one time we were working on a home and we were doing some floor repairs, and we had to remove the carpeting. Well, the carpeting, wall-to-wall carpeting, was really down to where it was almost like a sheet of burlap. all the pile had been gone. So we went out and we decided, well, we were fixing the subfloor, so we'll go out and try to find some wall-to-wall carpet. So we went to this place. The guy was great. He helped us out with the cost of it. And we bought this roll of carpet to the woman's house in the morning. And she just looked at it, and she just started sobbing.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, my word, can you imagine a lot of people, around that we know that would just be standing there sobbing that they got a roll of new carpet.
Yeah. If it was me, I'd say, well, how thick is the pile?
Right, exactly. What kind of padding am I getting?
Yes. That's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
Annette, we need to take a break, so I want to talk a little bit more about this and about good works when we come back. So everybody hang in there with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly. I'm here with my guest today, Annette Glaudel. We were just talking about her work with the say it again, please.
Appalachia Service
Project.
You're supposed to say Appalachia, not Appalachia, like we all do up here.
Yeah, we do. It's
we're trained when we go down there. It's Appalachia.
I'm just curious. Just one more question. Like, how do they react when you have a bunch of these kids coming in and adults who they know, are at higher socioeconomic group level? How do they react to that?
I've always had good experiences with people where they're just so grateful. We don't talk really about, well, what do you have versus what do I have? It's always just a lot of grateful discussion, and like I said, most people are happy and they're just thrilled.
So what do you talk about with them?
Their family, their history, their land, just what's happening in the area, industry, whatever.
Huh. Be curious. That would be interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Talk to people and hear something that's so foreign from what you're familiar with, either now or from before. But this is their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what about this Good Works thing?
Well, Good Works was actually started and patterned after Appalachia Service Project, but it is nice because it's local in Chester County. And we always think of Chester County as being this really high-priced area, but there are so many people in Chester County that really are struggling, with their income. And not being able to do repairs themselves. So Good Works was established, I think maybe 25 years ago. I'm probably wrong, but somewhere about that time. And it's patterned the same way. But what we do as a group is we meet one day every month. So you can just show up as a volunteer and go to they have 4 sites, either St. Peter's Village, Phoenixville, Coatesville, or Westchester. And you start off the day with prayer, and then we go out to work at a house. Or you can do like we did eventually, our church. We got a group of people, and they call it a partner church. And so what we do is we get a scope of work for one house, and we work on that one house until it's done. So some houses would take us a year to get done, working only one day a month.
Wow.
But it'll be a whole list of things. In fact, I just was yesterday at a house that we're going to start working on in another week or so. And, it's an 80-year-old woman, lives by herself. She has this really pretty old house with this beautiful woodwork in it and everything. But there are things that are just going wrong, and she can't take care of it, and she doesn't have the income to hire somebody to do it. So just pleasant woman. I just met her for a little while yesterday, but, windows are broken, or, there might be something wrong with the porch, or the doorknob's not working right, or she needs new lighting. It's just a variety of things. And sometimes, we just have people come in to help us clean up, because that's sometimes one of the biggest things.
Yeah. I've had that experience myself.
Yeah.
So you are doing good works.
Yeah, I would try.
You know what, Annette? I know that you did this, and you do all these other volunteer works things. But last year, one of your friends had a stroke.
Right.
And she lived in a very lovely house in a very nice neighborhood. But she never went back, did she?
No.
She never went back when she had the stroke, and she went into assisted living. And somebody had to do all that for her. They had to take care of they had to clean the house out. They had to sell all the stuff. Then they had to get the house ready for sale and sell it. And you were the one who did that.
Well, with other people. But
you were the project manager.
Yes. That's my role in life, I think.
Just to be a project manager.
Right.
But let me ask you, now I know she did one good thing in that she had long-term care insurance, so that kind of covered her for when she moved into assisted living.
Right, and not completely. I mean, long-term care insurance, again, I'm not an expert on that, but what she had as an insurance policy covered a portion of where she lives now and did not cover, in fact, home care. So had she wanted to go back home, that wouldn't have helped financially with it. But it does help partially with assisted living.
But the other thing is, for so many of my listeners who are single women, and I was thinking even like it's Joseph and I have no children. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you learned from that experience? Because it took you almost a year. Didn't it take almost a year?
Well, it took us a year, I guess, to get to the point that we knew we were going to sell the house. And then, and it took us a couple months pretty much almost full time. Now, it wasn't just me. We had my friend Annette Smith, who owns Smith Auction Company, who did work to help clean out the house. And with her help, we sold some things. Plus, I felt like I became an expert on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, trying to sell things. So it was intensive for probably 3 months or so, just to try to sell things. And also, I mean, I wanted to be respectful of my friend, because I didn't want to go selling things that she didn't want sold.
Right.
But now she goes from a house to one room in a facility, and we really did our best to try to keep as many things as we could that she wanted. But I would take pictures.
She had a lot of nice.
She had beautiful things, beautiful things that she had collected, beautiful clothes, everything. And she still does. You know, I took photos of everything and then brought it to her and said, okay, is this okay to sell? Is this not okay to sell? Or do you want to give this to somebody in particular? So
what should I be doing? Or one of my listeners who's a single or a couple with no kids, what are some of the things you learned that would be a good thing to start to do?
Well, things that I don't do, which is that you need to simplify, right? I mean, I always get anxious thinking about when I pass away, my poor niece and nephew are going to have to deal with my house, you know, and I have a lot of stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to try to simplify and make it so that the things that you really want are there, and the stuff that is extraneous, you just try to, sell, give away, whatever.
Put out on big trash day.
Yeah, I'm a big person about recycling everything. So I do as much as possible to donate and get things to Habitat, Restore, or Goodwill, or Salvation Army.
We've called them, and a lot of things that we have, they don't want. And old televisions, nobody wants old televisions. Oh, yeah, nobody wants old televisions. No. But there are a lot of things, like, case goods that are furniture that people might want. But you got to at least try to give them away to somebody. Yeah. And there's Christian ministries and things that need furniture. And the veterans will take things.
Yeah. Right. So I'm always pushing.
More than clothes. They'll take. Yeah. Right. More than clothes.
Right. Yeah. So I always I look at that as recycling. Don't fill up the landfills. Let's try to recycle as many things as we can. So that's one of the big things, just trying to get rid of things that you really don't have to have, and then getting paperwork in order. I mean, man, it was helpful to be able to go to one spot and be able to find paperwork that you needed, for her long-term care insurance, for her will or power of attorney, all of that.
I've had different guests on that have talked about that, to put everything in one place, so that anybody coming in could say, "Oh, here are the bank accounts. Here's where this is the attorney's name, address, and phone number."
Yes.
And so putting those things together can be really important.
Yeah. The other thing I learned a long time ago too, somebody told me, was get everything out of your wallet and make a copy of it front and back.
How?
Which I thought was a really cool idea.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Because if you're especially if you're in the hospital or something.
Yeah.
I never thought I can do that.
Yeah.
The decluttering part maybe not quite as easily.
No, I'm really bad at that. Yeah, I looked at Zillow to see prices in our neighborhood, and my house and the one next door, for some reason, are estimated lower than others, and I kept wondering how Zillow got in my house to see how bad it looked.
That's good, Annette, because I've looked on that same thing to see. I keep waiting to see if our houses have doubled in value since we purchased them, and I'm still waiting. It hasn't happened yet, but it's getting there. So so that idea of taking pictures of everything in your wallet and decluttering and getting, if you don't know Craigslist, or if you don't know somebody, is there somebody that can help you do that?
Excuse me. I think there are, I am so sorry. There are people who do eBay for you. But it's not that hard to learn. It's pretty simple to learn how to do things. Taking photographs is the biggest thing.
So, Annette, what's next for you?
I just like to continue to do what I'm doing. I really enjoy working on home repairs for people. I like talking to the people whose homes we go to. I like working for my church, doing things there.
So I think you should start a class to teach people like me how to do some of those things.
Yeah. I would love to do that. I actually really love training people. I think it's so important that people know the basics of their home, that you know how to shut off the main water, you know how to fix a toilet, just real basic things. And I think it's just an education process to show people, like when you first move into a house, just know those kinds of things.
And they're really important. I think at this point, I know a lot of that stuff, but only because we've had stuff happen and I had to learn it. But somebody new, and I think you're right, a new homeowner who never had a house, I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I just really am, passionate about making sure that people understand how things work. I think I love doing that. I love learning how things work. And I'm certainly not an expert carpenter or anything like that, or plumber, but, I'm certainly willing to try.
Well, Annette, this was fun to have you here today. Thank you for coming today. It's the end of the show, so we need to go. But thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. I love talking to you.
Thank you. So, and for you, my wonderful listeners, I hope you enjoyed our time together today with Annette, and I'm glad we got together. Thank you for coming. Please come back again with me next week. We're going to be next week in a New York state of mind, and probably not in the way that you're thinking about it. It'll be a little bit different. I'm wishing my sweetie, Joseph Eagle, a very happy birthday tomorrow. And this weekend, I'm looking forward to spending some time with him and his friends, and tonight, and just the two of us for the weekend. Don't forget to check out my romance tips. You can find them on the radio wrap-up today at victoriouswoman.com. And you can work with them all month and see what happens. And, if they work good, that'll be good. Just don't get pregnant. I have 2 quotes for you today from different women. Yes, I know that ship sailed for most of you. And you're just I just threw it in because I thought you'd get a kick out of it. I have 2 quotes for you today from different women, and I think they piggyback on each other. And the first one is more for you Victory Chicks, and the second one is more for you guys. So here goes the first one from Marianne Williamson, who said, "Romance is one of the sacred temples that dot the landscape of life." And now, you guys, here's an idea for decorating that landscape. And this quote comes from actress Kate Winslet, who said, "Ah, romance. To me, it's spontaneity. It's not diamond earrings. It's a bunch of daffodils that's freshly picked from the field. So you guys, if you have flowers in the backyard, go out and pick some and give them to your sweetie. And if not, just stop by the Giant. They just get a little thing of flowers. Who knows what good they'll happen. And if you like my 5 tips, let me know on my blog what you think. I always like to hear your feedback. Again, thanks for coming today, and I'll talk to you next week. Jen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.